Very often, we don't talk a lot about UK foreign policy. Very often, there is more to talk about going on at home than there is what we're doing abroad. Of course, we've touched on our sort of commitments to Ukraine. Sometimes we've touched on obviously the trade deals, but but it's more from the fact that it's going to affect domestic markets far more than they will affect foreign markets. But one thing recently, and it has just shown what an absolute pure, like, if you could take the most purest, cringiest foreign policy moment in the world, well, we've just seen it this weekend created. And that was James Cleverly going to China, where he went and it came across as being absolutely humiliating. Why? Because it's not just Brexit, the economy, home affairs that the Conservatives just cannot agree on. One big thing they still cannot agree on what to do is China. And Cleverly's visit just went to show just what an absolute mess this would be. So his whole visit was to go, oh, hey, it's better to talk than to fight. And yet, that is, of course, the whole point of diplomacy, to talk rather than to fight it out. But here's the problem. That very message that he was taking to China would have been far, far better served by saying it to his own Tories who have been throwing slings and arrows at his back all on his trip out to China. And oh boy, this just culminated into the perfect symbol of just how bad this whole global Britain notion that Britain can go it alone really is. Because I'll tell you now, James Cleverly turned up with sound bites and fury, and China just went and handled it very cool and calmly. There was nothing came from it. There were no commitments. There wasn't even, of course, the talk of trade. They didn't even manage to come out with a trade deal or talks to a future trade deal. Oh, it is an absolute, honestly, embarrassing mess that just goes to show you how bad the Conservative Party really are on just everything. And that now includes foreign policy. But before we go talking about more of this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one off Nation link called Buy Me Coffee. You can buy me coffee. And of course, there's the YouTube thank you button. There's the Pony Club down below as well. And of course, like I say, do remember to leave a comment and whatnot as well down below. So, this, it is difficult to think where to start, but as with all good beginnings and all catastrophes, you have to start at the beginning. Where did this all start? Well, of course, you have to look at the absolutely, completely unjoined, unstrategical focus that the Tory party has really had on China, because it has no idea what to do with it. Because the Tories are still in this post-imperial mindset, especially when it comes to foreign policy. And anything where the UK is a junior partner or isn't in control, well, quite frankly, they're not interested. It was part, of course, of the big reason that drove many of the Tory Brexiteers, because the UK was just not in control. Everyone had a fair seat and voice at the table. Yet these, Brexiteers demanded a bigger voice in the proceedings. And you've got to start, of course, with David Cameron. What was Cameron's policy with China? Well, if you may remember, Cameron hailed it as a new golden age. A new golden age that they would reach out to China and that we would all be working together and we would be singing Kumbaya and it would all be fantastic and look at all this wonderfulness. And then, of course, along comes Boris Johnson, who slapped on sanctions for, well, the stuff that was going on in Hong Kong. Then along comes Liz Truss, who labels China a complete enemy, someone that we should be very wary of. And then Rishi Sunak, who I can't even tell you what his China policy is because James Cleverly went to China with no clue about what he was even doing. So let's go forward on some of these misjoined up adventures. First of all, the golden era, an era where we were meant to be talking a lot with China and engaging with them. Well, Cleverly went and engaged with China, but because of how small and insignificant the UK really is, why is China going to pay attention? China is on average um, a massive polluter. And certainly when it comes to solving greenhouse, net zero, anything environmental, we have to get China on board. And we going to the UK, we going to China and saying, hey, you need to stop polluting. Why? They're approving on average about 2 coal-fired power plants a month. Why is China going to listen to the UK when even our own domestic green energy policy under the Tories has been an absolute shambles? So much for that. Then, of course, you had James Cleverly wagging his fingers, of course, continuing much to the Boris Johnson era, saying, of course, about the stuff in Hong Kong, Zhangji, and of course, the Uyghur Muslim thing. China's not going to listen to that. What? Why would they be terrified of James Cleverly wagging his finger, saying, "You need to stop that now, China"? And then, of course, we come on to Liz Truss's very hawkish policy. And I want to point out at exactly the same time, some very Tory hawks released a very stinging statement on what we should do to try and help protect Taiwan. Well, you may remember, of course, the infamous pivot east, which was very quickly disabused by the fact that we've got all the stuff going on in Ukraine right on our doorstep. Why on earth is the UK alone going to go and defend Taiwan when its armed forces are severely underfunded and already significantly overstretched? Yeah, China's hardly quaking in its boots. So this really does go to show you what an absolutely humiliating visit this really was in terms of foreign policy. China's not even interested in anything we've got to say or even what we've had to offer because Cleverly also tried to start negotiations around a potential trade deal. And as far as we're aware, nothing came of that. So this goes to show you this whole global Britain plan that the Tories had for the UK. Now it was going to be this big buccaneering country has absolutely failed, and that no country is going to go around listening to the UK. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.